So let me start this session. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this symposium titled Connecting Minds Across Disasters, a Global Perspective on Psychology and Crisis Response. I am Yuka Ozaki at Toyo University, and I'm very much honored to serve as the chair of this session. But actually, Dr. Quinn Khan is supposed to be the host, the chair of this session, and you'll see his name on this program. However, due to the delay of the public transportation, he's now on his way coming to Sendai, so he's now joining us on Zoom from Shinkansen. So can you say hello to everyone? Dr. Sin? Yes, you can't really talk now. Okay, so he'll be joining us later. And I am I am replacing his position as a chair, and I'll be hosting this session for the first half. And this session is most fitting and proper title as we gather here in Sendai, a city profoundly affected by the Great East Japan earthquake of 2011. Where years of experience in trauma care and community rebuilding remind us of the deep connections between psychology and disaster. We are fortunate to have two distinguished speakers today. From Turkey, Professor Çukur Cem Şafak will share his experience from the 2023 Turkey-Syria earthquake. His talk will highlight the challenges of mass displacement, shortage of mental health services, and the pressing need for community-based and cross-cultural approaches. And, excuse me, oops. Okay, here we go. And he will also address the importance of volunteer training and ethical frameworks to guide psychosocial support in times of crisis. And from Japan, Professor Ryohei Miyamae will present his research on recovery after the Great East Japan earthquake, focusing on the picture rescue movement through the restoration and return of damaged photograph. His work shows how memory can become a medium of rebuilding relationships, addressing collective trauma, and shifting from psychological care toward relational care and restores community ties. I sincerely thank our speakers and all of you for joining us today. I hope this symposium will inspire, and I think I skipped introducing our discussants today. Sorry about that. Excuse me. And we have a distinguished discussant too. Professor Hiroaki Daimon will then help us connect these perspectives and reflect on how lessons from different cultural and institutional contexts can enrich our shared understanding of disaster psychology. I sincerely thank our speakers and all of you for joining us today. I hope this symposium will inspire meaningful dialogue and strengthen our international networks of solidarity and collaboration. Now, without further delay, let us begin with our first presentation. Professor Dr. Şafak is a full professor and the head of the psychology department of Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University in Turkey. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And his research and expertise areas include applied social psychology, emotion and emotion regulation, statistics, and psychometrics. He was also the president of the Turkish Psychological Association until last year. So please join me in welcoming Professor Şafak.
Thank you. Thank you for this warm welcome. Okay, let's me open the slides. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I would like to thank to Japanese Psychological Association International Committee inviting me this symposium. I am very grateful about this, and like when you see my slides, there is a pictures on the left. Like this is the Japanese rescue team after the Turkish earthquake in the 2023 February. Like one of the active group came from the Japan, and they help in this rescue process is very, very important to us. The other picture is the Japanese team on the field in the Hatay, in the Turkey. Like today, I want to kind of combine the field experience, because when there is an earthquake, sites do not move. Okay. Okay. Like when the earthquake happens, I used to be the president of the Turkish Psychological Association, so I organized the still ongoing psychosocial support in the field. Turkish Psychological Organization is one of the biggest non-governmental organization in Turkey, and starting with the 1980s, one of the important mission of the Turkish Psychological Association to be part of the rescue, to part of the psychosocial support. So we have lots of experience. In the 2023, I already get my first-hand experience. But today also, I want to combine this field experience with some theoretical base, because in my last slides, my last speech, I always follow the Kurt Lewin best practice is the theory approach, because we have to mix with this experience with the theory. So, like when we look at the psychosocial support area, crisis psychology, I mean, we generally see the dominant approach is the individual approach, clinical approach. I mean, this is very useful approach. I am not criticizing. Of course, there are some reserve about the individual approach, the clinical approach. But during our experience, we observed that the individualistic clinical symptom-based approach is limited. So it's not everything is related to symptoms, individual trauma, and that one. So in last 2 years activities, we also add the community and social psychological approach. I think combining with these two approach, individual clinical approach and community-based approach, will further increase the efficiency of the psychologists in the field, and also the activities in the field from the psychological perspective. I will give some example of the community social psychological approach, but most of them come theories, social identity theories, socio-ecological models, social identity model of the community resilience. Resilience is one of the key factor here, like the collective action, also the cultural psychology, and most importantly, applied social psychology approach. Of course, like adding the community and social approach is important, but we never forget that this is the crisis, like especially during the intervention in the crisis, pragmatic approach always is in the place. In the pragmatic approach, I try to explain that I think it's a kind of extension of the community approach, because when you go to fields, I mean, one of the first things we do is the assess the needs. What is the people needs in psychological perspective? So sometimes we might have some plans before the moving to going to field, but after the getting in the field, the needs, the approach can be flexible, can be changed according to the community voice. I mean, what they say, what they need. I mean, we never forget this one. Like, let me mention about the last earthquake in Turkey in 2023. Like, the center is in the Hatay, Turkey, but it's also affected Syria. So it's in some of the international literature, it says this Turkish-Syrian earthquake. Like, it's a two earthquake in the very big size, and more than 50,000 people in Turkey and 8,000 people in the Syria lost their life. More than 120,000 people are injured. I mean, especially we also work with this injured group, especially amputation. One of the dramatic cases, the amputation, like people losing some of the bodies. Of course, our observation in this area, the earthquake affect everybody, but especially it's affected some disadvantaged groups, like the poor people, immigrants, because the region is also hub of the immigrant for Turkey. I mean, you can see lots of immigrants, most of the Turkey, but that region, the south part, it is a border with the Syria. I mean, there is a huge immigrant groups, like some of them is refugees, especially women, children, disabled, old people. So this shows that maybe we can tailor our approach, our models for these different groups, because not everybody affected as much as these disadvantaged groups. Like another problem after the earthquake also, I mean, as a Turkish Psychological Association, we didn't have the preparation for this, because we didn't expect, because the earthquake is huge, like 4 million people migrate to other cities. So we have to provide psychosocial support for different cities, not just cities, 10 cities affected in this earthquake, but they migrate to the other cities, Ankara, Istanbul, and so those are the other groups, like they are the escape from the place, the earthquake area. So first time we make the psychosocial support in this area. Also from the psychological perspective, psychological association. So we also give the support to people who lost their job in that area, like the lots of psychologists lost their job. Like one of the biggest problem that we face, the mental health service in the earthquake affected region is very, very insufficient. So it is not just the ordinary support. As a Turkish Psychological Association, we provide the main mental health service with support of the government, support of the other NGO. Okay, let me give you some individual level service that we provide in the region. Like the first one is the psychological first aids. Like the just speaking people with some semi-structured interview. This is not the therapy or not the counseling. It is just have connection with the people, listen their voice, also take their needs. Like this is it's very efficient things. I mean, the number is more than 10,000 people. Okay. Also, like the one of the problem that we face, especially a problem with the government and also the other NGO, because some people, when they get in the area, they want to start the therapy. they want to give counseling. We want to stop them, okay? I mean, we have to wait sometimes, okay? First get people experiences. So we wait like the 1 month, we make the preparation. So then after the screening the people, I mean, people who needs some kind of support, psychological support, psychosocial support, I mean, we provide them individual counseling. Also, one of the group that we have to think and give importance, like before the earthquake, there are lots of people who have already some mental health problems. Like because the structure is collapsed, like especially people who have some diagnosis with some of the mental health problem. I mean, those are the special groups because most of the health providers, mental health providers, try to help the other people. So there is a lot of limited access to people who already have some diagnostic, especially people with some of them is suicidal tendencies. I mean, we try to determine them. We try to talk them, and with the help of the World Health Organization, I mean, provide them some of their basic drug, some prescription, okay, or if they are going on ongoing therapy, we provide them. Like one of the other important things is like when you go to field, I mean, there are lots of uncertainties. I mean, there are lots of tension. There are lots of insecurities. So that field, that kind of make risky for some people, especially sexual abuse or the other violence. So we give lots of importance here. I mean, not just ordinary psychological counseling, but take some prevention to our volunteers, also members in the communities, how we can kind of download or kind of prevent the violence or sexual abuse case. Unfortunately, I mean, we observe one of the case, but we have to deal with bin. Also, we always follow. I mean, take the people information about who have show some symptoms. But again, the key is here in the individual level. I'm going to talk a little bit later. Like just be calm and first listen to people, their needs, not just play I am a psychologist, I am a clinical psychologist, I am a trauma, like specialist. No, I mean, especially first 2 months, first months, I mean, we are just human. We are there as a human, not just a specific group. Also, this at the first time in our history in Turkish Psychological Association, we create the community-based intervention. Like this is the first time. I mean, we try to analyze them. We try to get publication from here. Also, we create two different groups. Like one is the trauma-centered psychologist, the other is the social psychologist, developmental psychologists, social workers. So, especially during these things, I mean, generally we organize, we make the community gatherings, people in the container or tent yards, and like because there is a new identity is springs. Like yes, people have lots of identity, ethnic identity, religious identity, gender identity, but this time they have a new identity. I mean, they generally consider themselves as a people who affected by the earthquake. So there is some kind of common identity springs. So we try to build this identity, talk about their identity, listen their voice. Okay, this is the one of the important, especially when we look at the psychological literature. The classical psychological literature have a generally negative views about the group, society, communities. like Le Bon or Freud. I mean, people come together and they are panic. We don't observe this in the field. I mean, yes, there is some insecurities. There are some of the anxieties. Yes, some of them collective trauma. But also people have come together. I mean, what can they do? So we try to develop this identity, and also we give some psychoeducational. That's the important about the like the what is the personal space, because one of the problem in the earthquake area is the lots of people gather in the very small place. I mean, they live together in the tents. So teach them like what is the personal space. We try to take some. So also we write a report to government. I mean, create these spaces that people can be relaxed. People can have some kind of hygienic problem, like that kind of things. Also, we give the another important things is here. Like there are lots of volunteers. I mean, we have to support them volunteers. I mean, this is the also important, because people go to field with the lots of good intention, but most of them do not have a experience. I mean, they want to come there. There is lots of volunteer groups, but also lots of volunteer groups go through some kind of second-hand trauma. Okay, there also can be, sometimes they can be part of the problem. So you have to work with the, we also give the education to governmental staff, because they are also not so experiences, so they don't know what they do. So there is some connection between volunteers, government, and community. Especially, we get lots of positive outcome from this community gathering, and also the area that affected by the earthquake is the multi-ethnic, multi-religious place. Like it is very different from the rest of the Turkey. So knowing them identity, knowing them culture, and giving this information to volunteers are very, very important, because there are some tension between different ethnic group, tension among the, like there is a tension with the government workers and the people in that area. So we generally be there and help make that bridge. Okay, but to make that bridge, you have to understand the people in the field. I mean, they are not, they have different beliefs, they have a different religious tradition, they have a different language. So knowing the area, and training. So based on this approach, we also, this is the important before getting the field, both clinical approach and social psychological approach. We give this education, so our volunteers never go to field before getting the education, so they get their education. Okay, I mean, they, like some of the people we excluded from the volunteers group, because I mean they have a different approach. I mean they want to do some unethical things, so you have to control and give the trainings. Like I think this is the very, very important. I mean, from our experience and some theory, I mean, I can talk about some needs that we can work international. Like in the field, the biggest problem that we face is the language barrier, because in our team, people talk Turkish. I mean, we don't have the people in our field that speak the like Arabic, Kurdish, or the other language. So, especially first 6 months, we have the problem with the connecting with the immigrant and refugees. So later time, we kind of give some education to people who can speak that language. So it's one of the biggest uh, problem. Like I remember, a family invite me their house, like their children has a real problem, but I can help them because I can speak their language. Okay, it is the one of the sad time. Of course, we bring the specialties, people with speak that language. So also another problem, especially that part of the Turkey, the rural and urban distinction is very important. I think rural and urban, because I mean reaching the people in the cities center is very easy. Like you build up some centers. I mean you give them your phone number and some call center, but reaching the rural area is very difficult. So we try to develop a mobile system. So instead of the people coming and taking service, I mean we go to them because there is some village. I mean they don't want to leave their house. They don't want to leave. They don't want to leave their like the village. So you have to reach them. So the mobile systems is the very important. Again, I talk about the like the some we need to develop our prevention and intervention methods. I mean, we should include the domestic violence, lack of educational support, sexual abuse, assault. I mean, those are the so the people not just experience the effect of the earthquake, because earthquake is kind of destroy the community there. So you don't have a structured community, you don't have services. So that time, lots of risk is rising. So you have to take some prevention methodology. So it's not just the trauma, but protecting the people, especially if you put the people like in the very small place, like we have to intervene some of the domestic violence problem. So we shouldn't just think about the trauma that related to earthquake, but also the trauma of the losing the social identity, losing the community sense, losing the role in that society. Like for example, I remember a guy like he is kind of rich, but he lost his lots of houses. He lost his lots of materials. So he said that I am the ordinary people. I become the ordinary people. So there is a statue changes, like economical status change. Okay, like people lost their jobs. So there is lots of change in community. We have to take care of this. Like about the NGOs, like the again Turkish Psychological Association is the one of the biggest and important role in this natural or human-made crisis or disaster. Like one of the problem that we observe is there is lots of lack of disorganization among the NGOs and government. Like so, I mean, before this kind of crisis, there is some preparation should made, some plan should made. We have real problem that, like another problem is there is lots of NGOs in the field, but they specialize for the different things, like helping the poor. But sometimes they also want to give the psychosocial support. I mean, they want to give the therapy. They want to give. So there is a like confusion, role confusion. Okay, like there is a Turkish Psychological Association. Yes, we support some material sources, but mainly we did our job as a psychologist. But unfortunately, the other NGOs, I mean, they try to do everything. Okay, I mean, yes, I mean, maybe they are good in the intention, but the role should be very clearly determined, and the NGOs is accredited for this. The accreditation process is start. Also, we feel that there is a not we don't have the handbook. We try to prepare right now, because written material is very valuable, because in this chaotic atmosphere, you can't reach every volunteers one to one. So the handbook really needed. Also the ethical rules. Unfortunately, there is a not clear-cut ethical rules how volunteers will work, in which condition works. Also, the one thing that we observe, yes, we support that people should make some publication, scientists, based on their experience in the field. But there should be some, okay, like the ethical rules, how you publish them, how to, like that is the, I think, serious problem. People coming to field, I mean, they talk to people, collect the data, but there is no limitation, okay. I think the another thing is the field, the scientific field. Like this is the, I really, do I have time? Or I already, I have time? Yes, I think I can continue a little bit more. Okay, okay. Like I think the biggest problem in the field, yes, we are volunteer. Yes, we try to help the people. Yes, we are professional. We try to execute our jobs there. But unfortunately, I couldn't find any evaluation studies. Yes, we make intervention there, but whether this intervention is effective or not effective, okay, do we give people the harm? I mean, in generally, in the scientific community, there are very limited studies about these evaluation studies. I mean, there are some studies in the United States about most of them is psychosocial support to firefighters. And when I read these evaluation studies, I shocked. Because that, I think there is a 10 different evaluation studies. Like 5 evaluation studies show that this kind of intervention give harms, not profit. I mean, 3 of them show that there is no harm or no gain. Just 1 or 2 studies show that there is some meaningful effect. Of course, we can talk about the effectiveness, about the mental health, we can talk about the economical term, and we conduct, again, I mean, being the volunteer doesn't guarantee everything. You know, like, you have to show that if you are in the field, I mean, the model, the intervention techniques, I mean, it can be both individual level or community-based level. We have to show to society that our work is effective. I think this is a real problem. I talk about the publication ethics. I mean, we need more interdisciplinary studies because in the field, for the practical reason, generally we work as a team, like the social workers, sociologists, the other fields, so more into. Also, we need the volunteering studies. I think it's a speaking area, like what is the being volunteer? What is the effect of the being volunteer? I mean, there are new studies coming because most of this organization, this psychosocial support provided by the volunteers. So how we can increase the volunteerism, okay, or effect of the being volunteer in the field. I mean, we conduct more studies that also more cross-cultural cultural studies. Like, for example, it is my I think mistake. It is my lack of the things like preparing for this congress. I heard, but I didn't know the details. Like in the Sendai, the congress held is also there is a big earthquake. I mean, like for example, we know very little about what the psychological community did there. So I start to read that things. I mean, like before this earthquake, the Turkey earthquake, if we have a knowledge about the Japanese experience in the field, maybe we can provide better services. Okay, so we need to talk about each other. I mean, share the knowledge. Also, I always say that nothing as practical as good theory, because I think there is some prejudice about the theories. Like people think that we apply to theory in the field. No, I mean we take the theories because it's not just the experience. We have to conceptualize, theorize, and use some common language in that. It is not just a classical report like we did this, but instead of the we try to develop more culture-sensitive theories, intervention programs. Okay, to keep my time, I already talked about this one. If you have a question, I'm more than happy to answer all of them. End of the discussion. Thank you, showing the solidarity. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Kuka. Thank you for sharing. Maybe we have some questions in the floor. And if you have any simple questions, maybe you can ask now, and maybe we can ask it later. How about the participant here? Any question? Okay, thank you. Maybe we can ask later about his presentation. Thank you very much, Professor Kuka.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry I'm really late for this event. My name is Kun Jiang, or in Japanese they call me Sen. I'm associate professor at Kyushu University. I'm really sorry that today I just came from Fukuoka, and there is a series of traffic troubles. So I just came here very late. And I was designated to be the chair of this session. So, and actually we met with Kuka each other 2 years ago in another symposium, in another conference in China. So I heard his presentation about earthquake. So I thought at that time, one day, I want to introduce him to Fukuoka, to Japan, especially to Sendai, to share his knowledge. And next presentation will be given by Associate Professor Ryohei Miyamai from the Faculty of Urban Management, Fukuyama City University. And so Professor Miyamai, his research is about the disaster studies and also social psychology, the group dynamics. And he's also very, has very good knowledge about the photograph. So today, actually, his presentation is about how to, cure the trauma after the great earthquake in Japan. We call this 311 in 2011. And after the earthquake, he did a lot of serious activities. So I'm very honored to invite Professor Miyamai to give his speech.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Ryohei Miyamai from Fukuyama City University in Hiroshima Prefecture. Today, I will talk about Japanese disaster recovery in Tohoku since the 2011 disaster, based on my more than 10 years of field work. Okay. Actually, I'm curious about the subtitles because it's my first experience to translate my Japanese speech into English. Is it okay? Okay. Anyhow, let me start with my presentation. Please take a look at this picture. At first glance, it is just a damaged photograph. But for the owner, it was a piece of memory, a wedding, a childhood moment, or family gathering. After the disaster, thousands of such photographs were found in the mud. Volunteers washed them, cleaned them, and tried to return them to their owners. Today, I will share what this picture rescue movement tells us about recovery, trauma, and community. I am a social psychologist, and I work mainly in the field, not in the laboratory. I go into the field, listen to people's stories, and learn from their experiences. My presentation has 3 parts. First, I will introduce a case study of the picture rescue movement. Second, I will discuss the concept of collective trauma, not individual trauma. And finally, I will suggest the idea of relational care as a way forward in thinking about recovery. The Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami happened on March 11, 2011. It caused a lot of damage with over 775 deaths and 2,550 missing people. There are surveys that ask people in the affected areas, to what extent do you feel your community has recovered from the disaster? According to a 2023 survey by Kahoku Shimpo and Macromel, about 70% of residents in Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima coastal areas answered that they felt recovery had been achieved. But here is the key question for me. Should we interpret 70% as already much or as still only? More than 10 years have passed, and yet 3 out of 10 people still do not feel recovered. When we look deeper, we see divisions. First, there is a division between disaster-hit areas and other regions of Japan, what we call the problem of fading memory. Second, there are divisions inside the affected areas themselves. For example, between people who lost loved ones and those who did not. Another is the experience of relocation. In many coastal towns, residents were forced to move to new housing on higher ground. As a result, the original communities were scattered and separated. Even though the rebuilt town may look new and orderly, many residents feel that their former sense of togetherness has been lost. That's a very big divisions in recovery. I participated in over 50 activities of returning damaged photos as a volunteer for over 10 years, from 2014 to 2025. The research site is Noda village in Iwate Prefecture. This small village, with about 4,000 people, lost 37 people in the earthquake, and about 80,000 family photos were washed away and recovered. I'd like to show you some photos that were damaged. This shows drying photos that were damaged by flooding. Some photos cannot be adequately dried and remain muddy. It is necessary to wash off the mud as soon as possible. Washed photos sometimes have parts where the ink has washed off, but in most cases, the image remains and can be returned to the owner. These cleaned photographs became more than simple records of daily life. They carried multiple layers of meaning. First, the original family memories captured before the disaster. Second, the physical damage caused by the tsunami or the flood. And third, the traces of restoration by human hands. In this way, photographs function as multi-layered media of memory. They documented not only what was once there, but also what was destroyed, what was damaged, and how it was restored. Each photograph became an archive of both disaster and recovery. The activity of restoring disaster-damaged photos began in Japan since 2011 tsunami. The main purpose of this activity is to preserve the victims' precious memories and support their emotional recovery. The specific activities include receiving the damaged photos, removing dirt, and returning the cleaned photos to their original owners. Sometimes the photos are also digitized. Recently, this activity is sometimes called the picture rescue movement, combining the words picture and rescue. Let me introduce one example from my fieldwork. After the earthquake, more than 80,000 photographs were washed away in Noda village. Volunteers and self-defense forces collected them, carefully cleaned them, and more than 70,000 photographs have already been returned to their owners. I myself have been part of a local volunteer group called Team Kitaria's Photo Group, working on this activity for more than 10 years. If you leave wet photographs as that photos, bacteria invade the gelatin layer and the image completely disappears. To prevent this, volunteers carefully washed or wiped the photos, removing dirt and seawater. This work was delicate and time-consuming, but it was the only way to protect the images from being lost forever. We organized photo return team meetings in temporary housing community centers. People came to look for their own photos, but they also encountered many private pictures of other families. Gradually, the boundary between my photo and your photo blurred. In the end, the photos were reconstructed into our photos, a shared memory of the entire community. This is a video showing photo return team meetings. Okay. Although this is muted, but I believe the video will help convey the atmosphere of our meeting. So that's how we find the owners and return the photos to the owner. And sometimes the survivors cried and saying, I'm happy to find my photos. Okay. The main goal of our photo return meetings is to help people recall their everyday lives by looking at the photos. This creates a space for chatting and reminiscing about memories with tea and sometimes we serve the cakes. At these gatherings, villagers often said things like, "I know this person. He used to work at the post office and now lives in Morioka City." Such local knowledge cannot be replaced by technology, AI technology or some. It shows that memory is not only an individual possession, but also a collective resource embedded in community. Thus, the picture rescue movement was not simply about returning lost property. It was about restoring relationships and recreating community ties after disaster. Let me start with the concept of collective trauma. This idea was proposed by American sociologist Kai Erikson in 1976. Like individual trauma, which damages the inner life of one person, collective trauma occurs when an entire community is broken apart. To put Erikson's point simply, it is not me but us that the disaster destroys. Erikson also illustrated the idea collective trauma in the book "I Continue to Exist, Though Damaged and Maybe Even Permanently Changed." You continue to exist, though distant and hard to relate to. But we no longer exist as a connected pair or as linked cells in a larger communal body. From this point of view, we consider they are not only individually traumatized, but also collectively. It's the trauma of losing their community. In the Great East Japan earthquake, people did not only lose their houses or family members, they lost their towns themselves, schools, shops, hospitals, post offices, and all the functions of daily life. This meant that people also lost the people they could share their lives with. This is the essence of collective trauma, I think, the destruction of the social fabric. This photo shows Noda village, which I've been visiting for many years, on the land flattened by the tsunami. They built a large park as protection against future tsunami damage. The mayor at the time told me that as part of the recovery from the Great East Japan earthquake, we created a beautiful park so that no one would live here anymore. But please remember, people once lived and worked here. Erikson also pointed out something very important. Trauma is not only caused by disasters themselves, but also by the process of recovery. In Tohoku, many towns were relocated to higher ground or raised by 10 meters. From outside, the new towns looked beautiful, but for local people, these new towns felt disconnected from their past. Recovery created new divisions. This is the paradox of recovery. Infrastructure is rebuilt, but human ties are still broken. Erickson also said, by now it would seem a certain equilibrium should have been restored, but no, along the entire length of Buffalo Creek, people continue to feel that they are lost in a strange and different place. I think it is a similar situation in Tohoku coastal areas. This photo shows temporary housing after disaster. It became a place where original communities were divided and scattered. Many residents did not even know who their neighbors were. These conditions created very fragile communities where daily connections were lost. In some cases, this even led to kodokushi, solitary death in isolation. This reminds us that recovery is not only about providing shelter, it is also about rebuilding the social ties that make life meaningful. In Japan, after every major disaster, we often hear the phrase kokoro no care or psychological care in English. This kind of psychological support is very important, but I believe it is not enough because disasters do not only damage individual hearts, they also destroy relationships, the ties that connect people with each other. This is why we need what I call relational care. Relational care means supporting people to rebuild their human connections and to recover a sense of belonging in their community. It does not replace psychological care, but it complements it. Without restoring relationships, recovery cannot be complete. The photo return gatherings are one example of relational care. When people look at their photos, they naturally begin to tell stories about weddings, childhood, or everyday life. In the process, unexpected reconnections happen. Someone says, "I know this person," or "Do you remember this event?" These conversations help people not only to reconnect with others, but also to restore their own sense of identity as members of a community. Such photo return activities have an aspect of memory activism. Memory activism refers to using memories as a tool to change present or future society. It is important to continue activities for inclusive community reconstruction. Even after 15 years since the earthquake, people still come to look for their photos. Photos are very personal, so the timing of being able to face them varies from person to person. Continuing the activity without abandoning anyone is important for repairing community divisions. So let me conclude. Recovery is not only about rebuilding houses, roads, or infrastructure. Disasters destroy not only individual hearts, but also the relationships that connect people. So this is what we call collective trauma, the loss of community ties. The picture rescue movement shows us that memory is not just about the past. It can be a resource to restore relationships and rebuild community. This is why we need to move from psychological care to relational care. Recovery means sustaining human connections across both space and time. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Miyamai, for a very touching and very heartwarming story. I know there's a lot of this kind of activities after the earthquake or the natural disaster in over Japan. And Professor Miyamai's presentation just remind me that in Kyushu area there was a big earthquake in 2016. We call it Kumamoto earthquake. And after that earthquake, the university students also did this kind of volunteer activities. And they do this very frequently and years after years. So I just want to ask if there is any comments or questions to Professor Miyamai's presentation. So we have time for some simple ones. If you have, please. Ah,
ありがとうございました。私は東北の仙台沿岸にあります東北医科薬科大学病院に勤務しております。今日は大変興味深いご発表ありがとうございました。8月はお盆があって9月は秋の彼岸があって私たちが亡くなったたくさんの人たちのことを思ってメモリアルサービスをする大切な時期にこのようなプレゼンテーションの場を作ってくださってありがとうございます。ここは東北学院大学のホールなんですけれども、ここはパイプオルガンがあってここには聖書があって、つまり礼拝をする場所なんですね。亡くなった人を思い祈る場所ですし、2011年の東日本大震災、お隣の東北学院大学の千歳キャンパスのところもですね、本当に大変でしたし、学生も大変だったんです。ですからそのような場所でこの、チャーチの場でこのようなプレゼンテーションをしてくださったこと、これは日本心理学会の先生方のお心だというふうに私は受け取ってしみじみと今日のプレゼンテーションを聞いておりました。ありがとうございます。私はですねこの東北医科薬科大学というところにいるんですけれども、たくさんの人が亡くなった仙台の沿岸にある病院と医学部です。復興のために建てられた病院であり、復興のために医師を養成するということで医学部が開学したという歴史があります。2016年に医学部の1期生を迎えて、私たちはこの経験をもとにですね、東北の復興に邁進するということで医学部開学し、私もその中に入りました。私はですね毎月海外のトレーニング、ディスカッション、プレゼンテーション入っていまして、ここ最近今年はですねポーランドの方のプレゼンテーションに参加をしておりまして、仙台トラウマ、津波トラウマということでプレゼンテーションさせていただいています。私はですね集団的トラウマに関してはノースアメリカの方のトレーニングに入っているんですけれども、そのお話とこの地域ですね、このコミュニティセンター仙台をセンターにしたときに、私たちは当事者であって被災地であって、ここから外に発信していくっていうことが大事だっていうことを思っているんですね。その中で私は地域トラウマとかコミュニティトラウマとか町内会トラウマっていう言葉を使うようにしているんですけれども、今日お話しくださったこの集団的トラウマっていうのはどのようなあたりの概念を指していらっしゃるかをまず教えていただければ幸いに存じます。
はい、非常に重みのある言葉ありがとうございます。そして質問もありがとうございます。それでは宮前先生、最後のご質問についていかがお考えでしょうか。
はい、とても貴重なコメント、そして質問ありがとうございます。コレクティブトラウマについては、確かにたくさんの論者がいろんな説明の仕方をしている概念ではあると思うんですけれども、私の場合は、災害研究の文脈の中で使われている、説明の仕方、それは何かというと、災害によってコミュニティが破壊されたんだ、そのことによって私たちはコミュニティの一員として生きてきたというアイデンティティがあるわけですけれども、そこが断ち切られてしまった。なので個人にだけ注目していると、個人は回復するかもしれないけれど、それまで生きてきた、いろんなエネルギーの補給源であったコミュニティがないがしろになっていては、本当の回復っていうのは望めないだろうと、そういうふうに考えています。ので集団とかこのエリクソンの本の中では共同性っていうような言い方をすると思うんですけれど、この共同性の中で生きているっていうことにより着目する、そういうような考え方でコレクティブトラウマを捉えています。
わかりました。そうすると、もしかすると私が考えて、私は当事者であって被災地にいて、被災地の中にいて暮らして、そこで大学病院で勤務していて医師を養成するっていう仕事をしていますから、それを含めた時にやっぱり中の人なんですね。内側の人なんです、私っていうのは。ですからこの内側、仙台コーストっていうものをセンターにした時に、今おっしゃってくださった共同体っていうところが、もしかしたら私が考えている、それから地域の皆さんと共有しているコミュニティトラウマに近い概念なのかなと思いました。時に私は町内会トラウマっていう言葉も言います。それからこの東日本大震災っていうのは本当に一言では言い尽くせないたくさんのことがあったので、私は正直申し上げると、私も専門家であってサイコロジストではあるんですけれども、その立場でありながらこういうふうに言うのは少しいいのかなっていう迷いはあるんですけれども、トラウマとか専門的な用語っていうのも飛び越えたところにある災害経験だっていうふうに思っているんですね。ですのでなかなかそのトラウマっていう言葉をここの中の内側の人間として言うときと、それを外の人たちに言うとき、海外の人たちに言うとき、この東北を知らない人たちにトラウマっていう言葉を伝えるときに大変誤解される語弊があるっていうふうにも思っているんですけれども、今日トラウマケアっていう言葉もですね、アブストラクトの方で読みましたけれども、どのようにお考えになるかなっていうことをまず思っていたっていうことと、やっぱりつながるっていう話が最初のところにあったと思うんですね。ターキーの先生からも大変貴重なお話をいただきまして、本当にありがとうございます。その上でなんですけれども、これは質問でもなく一つのこれは何でしょうね、私からのお願いではあるんですけれども、9月のこのね秋の彼岸を控えた時期にこういう場を設けていただきました。先生方せっかく仙台に来てくださったので、もしよかったら足を運んでいただきたいんです。閖上の伝承施設があります。閖上の記憶っていう場所があるんですけれども、実際に子どもさんを亡くされた、津波で亡くされたお母さんたち、地域の人たちがそこで語り部になって地域のことを伝えている、当時のことを伝えているっていう活動があります。9月は秋の彼岸もあるので、たくさんの人が来館する場所なので、ぜひ沿岸のですね閖上に訪れていただきたいなということと、あともう一つポスターセッションが6階のフロアであったと思うんですね。で、私は先ほど韓国からいらっしゃった研究者の方とディスカッションしていて、実は仙台のこととか仙台空港のこと知らないと言われたんですよ。で、私6階のフロアから窓を見た時に仙台の沿岸が広がっていました。荒浜です。当時の暴風林がですね津波でだいぶ抜けてしまってスカスカになったところが見える場所だったんですね。で、その韓国の先生は全然知らなかったわけなんです。ですのでここの場所が一体やっぱりどういうことなのかっていうことをですね感じていただいてお話しいただきたいなっていうのが一つあったんです。それはトラウマインフォームドプレゼンテーションです。やっぱり内側の人間がこういう話を聞くときってやっぱり構えと防衛っていうのがあります。これは正直な気持ちです。何を言われるんだろうとか、自分たちの実情と違うことを言われるんじゃないかとか、 自分たちの経験したことを否定されるんじゃないかっていう少しセンシティブになるところがあります。それは少しお考えいただいてトラウマインフォームドプレゼンテーションでお願いしたいと思うんです。先ほども岩手のね岩手の、野田ビーチの写真だったりとか被災したフォトをですねたくさん並べていただいたんですけれども、ぜひ私たちのそういうセンシティブなところもですねガードしたいと思うので、ぜひトラウマインフォームドプレゼンテーションでこの後もお願いしたいと思います。ありがとうございます。
大変貴重なコメントをいただきましてありがとうございました。先ほどちょっと英語で少しお伝えしたように熊本地震が発生した後はですね、実はちょっと東海大学の阿蘇キャンパスの学生たちが語り部活動をずっと続けていて、そのフォローというか産業観察というかちょっと研究を一緒にさせてもらったことがあります。で確かに、ね、今おっしゃったようにですね、本当にその一つの言葉っていうか一つの心理のこういった事象はですね、実際の当事者なのか、それとも研究者外側の人間なのか、見方それと語り方は全然違いますので、我々もこういった、企画はですね、本当にこの仙台、この地に合わせて、こういった企画を、ぜひしようかと思ってました。で世界各地にですねまたこの地震の災害が起こってます。でトルコもそうですし、あとこの間アフガニスタンですね、同じような地震があってすごい大きな災害起こしているんですが、少しでもですねちょっとこの心理学の側面から少しでもこの知識との共有、それとこういったナラティブとかエピソードの共有ができたらなと思ってます。引き続きこれからもちなみに仙台空港の海岸沿いの施設ですね、私一度訪問したことありまして、すごいいろんな展示品とかありましてですね、本当に思い身のあるような本当にいろんな人の思いが詰め込んだような施設だというふうに感じました。ありがとうございました。はい、okay, so let me return this topic to English, and finally we will have our panelist or discussant, Professor Hiroaki Daimon. Professor Daimon is associate professor at the Department of Regional Management of the University of Fukuchiyama. He's also working as a disaster research center at University of Delaware at the United States as a visiting scholar. And his research interest is about volunteer activities as well as activities about disaster resilience, recovery, and reconstruction. And based on the viewpoint of group dynamics, he did a series of qualitative and quantitative studies about earthquake disaster. So, Professor Daimon, please.
Thank you for the wonderful introductions. And my name is Hiroaki Daimon from the University of Fukuchiyama, Japan. And also, it is my honor to be here as a discussant for this symposium, Connecting Minds Across Disasters. And as a discussant, my role today is to connect two excellent presentations we have just heard, and to highlight both their commonalities and the differences, and also finally to raise some critical questions that may help us broaden the discussion together. So in the next part, I will first briefly summarize the key takeaways from Dr. Çukur and Dr. Miyamai. Let's go on. Here we go. Yep. So let me start briefly summarizing the key points from two presentations. And first, Dr. Çukur highlights the importance of a multi-layered approach. So this means that disaster psychology should not only provide clinical support for individuals, such as PTSD interventions or protection against abuse, but also community-based support, such as creating a sense of community and organizing volunteer gathering. He also emphasized the crucial roles of volunteers and NGOs. The training is necessary not only in clinical psychology, such as working with trauma, children, and grief, but also in social psychology or community psychology, including teamwork and ethics in the field. Third, he stressed pragmatic orientations. Interventions need to be evaluated for their effectiveness and ethics, and theory should be tested in practice. I am a group dynamics researcher, and I know though there are such words as Kurt Lewin once said, nothing is practical as a good theory. So it means that theory is not divided from the practical orientation. And second, Dr. Ryohei Miyamae approached recovery from the perspective of memory and community. First, he showed that memory exists not only on an individual level, but also on community level. It means memory is also multi-layered. Recovery requires not just preserving memory, but also creating spaces for recollection and against fading memories. And second, he focused emergent volunteer practice, such as the picture rescue movement, where photos damaged by tsunami were cleaned and returned to the owners. So this addressed potential and unforeseen needs and also recreated community tie. And finally, he introduced the concept of collective trauma based on Kai Erickson's work from the Buffalo Creek in the United States in 1972. Disasters do not only traumatize individuals, but also disasters can tear entire community apart. So in this sense, activities like photo return gathering and tea meeting represent significant attempts to heal community-level trauma in terms of reconnecting past and current community history. So while one presentation focused more on clinical, social, and pragmatic interventions, and on the other on memory, emergence, and collective trauma. Both share important insights into how psychology can contribute to disaster recovery in action. In the next slide, I will compare their commonalities and differences. Here we go. So now let me highlight the common ground and also the differences between the two presentations. So both presenters emphasize that disaster psychology must go beyond individual level. So Dr. Çukur showed how teamwork, NGOs, and volunteer resident collaboration are important for providing supports and rebuilding a sense of community. In the same line, Dr. Miyamae, from a different angle, demonstrated how collective memory and shared recollection contribute to restore community ties. So in short, disasters damage not only individuals, but also the collective fabric of society. Recovery, therefore, must restore collectivity, not just recover clinical symptoms. And second, another commonality is the role of external supporters. Both underline the significance of volunteers and NGOs, and they also cautioned us about ethics of support, that interventions must remain survivor-centered and sensitive to the experience of survivors, as one audience already mentioned that. And at the same time, there are important differences with regard to approaches to needs. Dr. Çukur stressed the role of established organizations, NGOs, and trained volunteers working within structured systems. By contrast, Dr. Miyamae focused on emergence, new tasks and new forms of organizations arising in response to unforeseen needs, such as the picture rescue activities. So this reveals a tension, but also represents a complementarity between professional training and improvisational adaptation. And with regard to focal points, Dr. Çukur highlights intersectional vulnerabilities or diversity. The compounded risks faced by language and ethnic minorities, women, children, and social disadvantaged groups. Those are type of minoritical components very important. In other words, he mainly focused on the differences between individuals. And Dr. Miyamae emphasized collective memory, how communities in a long time need to reconnect their past and future through shared narratives. In other words, he focused on the commonalities among community. So both approaches illuminate different but complementary aspects of disaster response. I will turn to critical reflections in the next slide. So finally, I would like to conclude my comments with several critical reflections and open questions to the audience. I hope to invite further dialogue among us. And first, who provides support? We know that volunteers and NGOs play essential roles, but how can they avoid reproducing existing power imbalances between supporters or outsiders and residents? And what does survivor-centered support really mean, especially when we compare different cultural contexts, such as Japan and Turkey? And second, how should support be provided? On one side, we have professional training, NGOs, clinical expertise, structured interventions. On the other side, we see emergent adaptation, spontaneous volunteers, community improvisation, memory activism. In the DRC typology, this is a tension between established and emergent organizations. I thought this key question is, can psychology integrate both approaches? And third, who should be supported? Should our focus be on differences or diversity, social vulnerability, or intersectionality, such as gender, ethnicity, and class? Or should it be on commonalities or key aspects of solidarity, such as concepts of social capital, collective identity, collective trauma, and collective memory? Perhaps more importantly, how can these two aspects complement each other in practice? And finally, toward where should we go from here? So what can Japan learn from Turkey, and what can Turkey learn from Japan? As Dr. Çukur mentioned solidarity in the last slide, this reminds me of the El Turco incident, 1890. Does anyone know the El Turco incident? El Turco jiken. I thought, I hope that the Çukur knows. And that is events when a Turkish ship was wrecked off the coast of Japan, and local people in Wakayama rescued the survivors. And this event became a symbol of mutual solidarity between our two nations. So now, beyond the two nations, can we imagine building shared frameworks for disaster psychology, a framework that are pragmatic, field-oriented, interdisciplinarity, and engaging also with other domains, such as experimental and cognitive psychology? And I hope this reflection can stimulate further discussion. And now I look forward to hearing your thoughts, comments, and questions. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Diamond. So for your very wonderful comparison and analysis of these two presentations. So I want to keep this slide here, and for these questions, I'd like Professor Kuka and Professor Miyamai, if you have any feedback to these questions, please turn on your microphone and give some comments.
Okay, thank you for feedback. I think Professor Diamond made great summary. I think his presentation is better than my presentation. He is a great summary and really good question. Thank you for this insights. I think these four main questions is the big questions. I think every people, scientists working in this area should consider those questions. I think especially who provide the support, power imbalance, it is really big problem in the field. You know, like we kind of take example from the medical rescue groups when we move to fields, because there is a rescue team, medical rescue team in Turkey. I mean, they get the different health professionals, like the different specialties in the medicine. I mean, what they do is, I think is a great example. I mean, they come from the different cities, different universities, different hospitals. Of course, the specialties is important, like people who is the surgery, some people is pediatrician, some of them is the psychiatrist. Yes, you cannot erase these specialties, but that team, that health rescue team, they are very good, nice, trained group. When they come to field, they first they do is they erase their affiliation, they erase their title. So everybody is equal. So then considering the specialties, they relocate the roles in the field. So we try to do that. I mean, of course, we don't have an effectiveness program, but it works. So I think it's a very good question, how we solve this power imbalance. I think, I mean, we can maybe use this kind of models, okay? Because as Dr. Miyaneki give lots of good example, like when you go to field, it's not the people lose their home or like some of their belongings, but there is a lots of uncertainties about roles. So the role confusion is really important. So we have to work. I mean, it is this true for also like the volunteers, professionals. Also, I have to say from I don't know how it's happened in Japan, but there is also some competition or conflict between non-governmental organization and state, the government. Like this is also a real problem. There are some regulation. Of course, we should have the regulation, but their working style and NGO working style is very different. Like from the field, I remember that psychologists, even psychologists who work for the government, they are not so volunteer. I mean, they just want to do their jobs. Like after the 5 p.m., I mean, you can find them, okay? I will say that it is, my hours is ended. But from our NGO perspective, Turkish Psychological Association, we work with more flexible schedules. Like, again, I mentioned a little bit, you know, like, generally, the government wants from us that work in the center. So they are open the center. They say that people will come to you. Okay, you sit in the center. They design a center. But lots of people cannot reach that center. So we have to find a new ways to reach the larger community, especially in the rural area. So right now, maybe we can take lots of example or experience from the Japan, because right now we are in the table with the government, create a new rescue plan. So we give them our report. So to try to rebuild this emergency plan, because in the original emergency plan that we have a real problem, like every NGO works for the different ministry. Like we work for the health ministry, some group work for the family ministries, the other is the others. So they have a different rules. So I don't know, I think it could be a good insight for us. I mean, is there any centered emergency plan in the Japan? Like, is there any cooperation? So maybe we also get some insight or experience from the institutional memory. Okay, I mean that would be wonderful. So to solve this problem, like the other one, the balancing the professional training with the emerging adaptation is also one of the key things, because like there are people who specialize in the trauma, specialize in the emergency position, but most of the volunteers do not have that knowledge. So kind of providing a short-term, very fast training season, I mean, we try to solve this problem, okay? But I always say from the third level perspectives, like the community voice is the most important things. Okay, what is their need? I think we prioritize we give the first to their needs. So in the field, generally we make the need assessment. I mean, at the first place, I mean, what is their need? Of course, we shouldn't. I mean, we should also careful about our scientific roles. Okay, I mean the ethical rules. Those are also important, because sometimes communities, the survivors, want a quick solution. I mean, sometimes they solve the problem. Like they say that my children have problems, solve it. But we know that it is not easy to solve that problem. It takes some time. So maybe one of the way to solve this problem is maybe we can classify these activities in 3 groups, like the pre-disaster, so working, like making the plan, giving some training, during the emergency, because during the emergency is the field is changed. You know, like the people in the charge is changed, so the rules is changed. So we have to adapt that emergency position. But maybe after the 6 months, we can talk about the post-crisis, post-disaster. Like it is, I love the Dr. Myanmar approach, you know, like the photo rescue. I mean, maybe we can't use that during the emergency, because that time the need is different. But after the 6 months, after some time passed, I mean, we should use this kind of techniques. I mean, probably I'm going to get connect with the Dr. Mehmet, and because what he offers is a good techniques. I talk about how to build the community, how to solve the community problem. I think it's a very practical, it is very effective, one of the way to use. I mean, I think we should increase this kind of techniques. Yes, we try to build community, we try to recover from the collective trauma, but we also need effective techniques. How we are going to do? Like in my presentation, I talk about, because during crisis, like making some focus group, making some group gathering with the local people, the survivors. Yes, it can be a technique, but also we need more creative techniques. I think Dr. Myanmar's offers and his valuable works is a good candidate because I myself remember the photos, like how my family come together. I mean, my mother shows, like my father shows their picture, and that time really we can communicate. I mean, 2 hours, 3 hours, I mean, the past memories come into mind, you know, like you are doing this, you are this kind of child. Generally, they consider that I am a kind of hyperactive children, so they make jokes. So it's kind of it's a good thing to rebuild the community. I mean, probably maybe we can apply in this in Turkey, in that things. I mean, I know there are some small activities about rescuing not just the photos but the personal items and giving to them the survivors. But it is the very small scale. I mean, your work is really systematic. I like them. Like the other things is the who should be supported, differences, and the commonalities. I think here we should know the community first, like from the cultural perspective. I think it's a very valuable because like some communities are more homogeneous. I mean, people similar to each other, people have some common identity. But in some regions, some communities, there is real problem because they are very diverse. So we have to consider them separately. So we should know the community first, so we can develop some different approach about that one. Also, one thing that reminds me Dr. Mehmet's explanation, there is also competition. I mean, the problem that we face in the communities, because the earthquake is hit in Turkey in the different cities. So there is some kind of competition among the cities. Who will get what? Okay, so you become the part of that problem.
Yeah, okay,
so
Professor
especially-
Kuka. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but the time
Yes.
is quite limited.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So because we only have 100 minutes for this session, and
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
No problem,
yes,
no problem.
maybe also some simple comments from Professor Miyamai to these questions.
Okay.
How about Professor Miyamai?
Hi. Okay. I answer simply. Thank you for great summary, Dr. Diamond. Among four questions, I mainly focus on the first one, how survivor-centered support we achieved. I think we need to visit the field, actually, and I must listen to the voices in the field. Actually, we researchers tend to interview only with community leaders or only with who have power or who can express their experience. And I think that's not enough. We must listen to who is set in weakened or vulnerable position. I think it's the first step to build the framework for disaster psychology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Miyamai. Because the time is limited, but I still want to see if there is any question from the floor or any comments, just like the ladies just now. If you have any comments, you can come to the microphone or any questions. Either Japanese or English is good. It's okay. Okay, as I said, this is really a very touching and very heavy topic, but we are very pleased we can do this session here in Sendai, in this very memorable city, for this event. And I know we have maybe endless topics or conversation about this earthquake or disaster psychology. So I think the people here, we have the common concerns about this topic. So I hope after this symposium, we can connect with each other and share about knowledge and our activities about disaster psychology. And today, sorry again for my very much delay, and I want to thank Professor Osaki for the MC at the beginning, and also the organizers of this symposium, the staffs of the JPA. And finally, I want to ask the three professors, Professor Diamond, Professor Miyamai, and Professor Çukur from Turkey to join this meeting. And we hope we can continue this topic after this symposium. Thank you very much.